Story 1. The government of the state of Rio de Janeiro, here in Brazil, uses public money to finance mystics to perform rituals to change the weather so it doesn't rain during events like Rock in Rio. Story 2. Those anti-5G protective stickers people put on their phones that cost $50 each. My aunt bought a pack and proudly showed me how it blocks radiation while still using 5G normally. Story 3. I used to read a lot of medical journals. One story. One man decided to stimulate himself by leaning his genitals against a machine. They became entangled in the machine, which threw him with such force that he was actually tossed in the air. It tore his scrotum open and removed one testicle. He was so embarrassed that instead of going to a doctor, he stapled his scrotum back together. He only went to the doctor after it became horribly infected. Story 4. U.S. military meme is a private buys a car with 15% annual percentage rate. A guy I served with did that. Except it was like 24.6% annual percentage rate. My non-commissioned officers said this wasn't unusual. Story 5. There was a special sticker applied to your car that allegedly helps to further break down the fuel molecules, thus giving you double the fuel volume for what you pay for fuel. Story 6. I'm from India. A lot of my people happen to think that cow urine has medicinal properties. I mean, I try my best not to judge anyone, but I really struggle with this. Story 7. One thing I was convinced didn't exist until I saw it for real was the moonbow, a rainbow that appears at night, created by the light of the moon instead of the sun. It sounds so unreal, but when I saw one, it was breathtaking. Story 8. When Lisa Marie Presley married Michael Jackson, I refused to believe it, but apparently they were in love. I thought he was just grabbing all the Presley music. Story 9. Because of Christmas movies, I thought canned hams were not actually real. I thought they were just props or smaller cuts of ham. I found out they actually existed at 21. I found out 5 years ago. Story 10. The potty putter. It is what it sounds like. A golf club, golf ball, strip of green, and a hole all designed to be used when one is on the toilet. I thought it was some late-night infomercial joke. Nope, the thing actually exists. Story 11. There are people who attempted to drink a hair toner, conditioner, or shampoo because in Poland, there was a collaboration between a hair care brand and our most popular chocolate factory. It smelled like chocolate even though it was very clear it was hair care products. So a person tried to eat it, and they said they didn't know it was for hair. Yes, because the most popular products in a drugstore are chocolate, bottled in a tube with a big conditioner label. I hope it was only a joke, but I really couldn't fathom how someone could be so foolish. Like Einstein said, the best example to prove infinity is people's stupidity. Story 12. Nothing. Life has been so full of wow, that's almost unbelievable people and actions that it's hard to think of a time I refused to believe something too stupid could exist. The Tide Pod Challenge, Jackass, the Darwin Awards, 60% of celebrities, and maybe 10% of United States federal politicians all exist and are outrageous. Story 13. I thought flamingos were just some goofy lawn ornament that boomers were into. I mean, bright pink with a whacked out, bent banana beak and standing around on one leg doing nothing all day. Then I went to the San Diego Zoo, and they had flamingos out in front at the space where you actually walk into the park. I was a bratty teenager with that attitude, and I snorted thinking, oh great, the zoo experience starts off with plastic flamingos, right? Then one of them moved, and it freaked me out. I had no idea they were real. Story 14. Russian / blocking detachments /. I mean, I was sure it happened in isolated cases in World War II, but surely not systematically. You have 1,000 guys with guns and at least some training, and a few others pointing guns at them and motivating them to charge into their deaths. In the West, your army would turn around and remove the enemy within first. It is just an absurd thought. And then the Russians started doing it again in the era where even a bear shitting in the woods is documented for posterity. Story 15. People who voted for Donald Trump the second time because they craved stability. Are you kidding me? Did we live through the same 2020? And then I met one, as dumb as a box of hair, owns more Donald Trump flags than brain cells, that one. Gave me a wink and a nudge while saying, but we won, didn't we? Heh. I guess because I'm white, he thought I was also racist trash like him. No man, I'm just in the store to buy a drill bit. Please leave. Story 16. I used to think those signs that say, wet paint, were a trick to stop people from sitting down. Until the day I decided to test one. Let's just say my genes lived to tell the tale. Story 17. Christians for Trump. In 2016, when someone mentioned them, I said, oh, come on, they can't represent more than 1% of the registered voters in this country. People that confused are statistically insignificant. I actually said that and believed it. I know the original poster asked about dumb stuff and Christians for Trump may be dumb, but mostly they're appalling to me. I'm not trying to start a political debate at all, but that's one thing I loudly and confidently denied the existence of because it seemed too preposterous to amount to anything. I can be so clueless sometimes it's scary. I have stopped overestimating my fellow Americans now. Story 18. I was at a farmer's market with my dog. He was getting a bit overwhelmed, so we stepped aside, and I crouched down to calm him. I saw a pair of fuzzy feet in front of me. I followed them up to a full-fledged furry dog costume with a leash and a handler standing in the area for dogs. I'm not trying to shame anyone, but I did get a little uncomfortable, and so did my dog. Story 19. Women receiving unsolicited explicit photos. I didn't actually see any photos, but I've read comments on the subject for years on Reddit. I was thinking surely there can't be that many women receiving these things. I mean, who would actually send something like that? But a few months ago, a female coworker confirmed to me that it really does happen. Story 20. People believing everything that comes from a source of power or worse, the television. It is mind-blowingly real. And it is like watching someone happily eat whatever falls off the king's table without once stopping to ask if it is food, poison, or just something the royal dog hawked up. Just because someone in a suit, a crown, or a lab coat said it does not mean it is gospel truth. It just means they have got better public relations and a nicer car than you do. The sheer foolishness of it is that these people do not just believe, they stop questioning anything. Critical thinking disappeared like a magician's bad coin trick. Suddenly, every headline or press release is treated like Moses brought it down the mountain on stone tablets. It is surreal watching people nod along to absurdities like they are at some cosmic bobblehead convention. And the excuses? Oh, but he is rich, so he must be right. Or, they would not lie on television. Oh, really? Buddy, there is a guy on late-night infomercials selling miracle anti-aging cream, and you are taking this as gospel? A politician makes a sweeping promise? Well, they would not lie on camera, would they? Spoiler, yes, they would. Come on. Seeing this play out in real life is like walking into a room and realizing everyone's eating crayons because the guy in a fancy tie told them it was a superfood. You cannot make it up. And the worst part? They are so sure they are right. So yes, people blindly trusting power without a single critical thought. I did not believe it was real until I saw it, and now I wish I could unsee it. Ask questions. Demand evidence. Treat every claim like it is on trial and you are the judge, jury, and advocate. Otherwise, you are not just eating whatever falls off the king's table. You are licking the floor and calling it a feast. Story 21. Guys telling women to smile. The first time I heard about it happening, I thought he must have meant to compliment my friend but bungled it and said something creepy instead. Then another woman talked about it happening to her. And then another, and I suddenly remembered it happening to me a couple of times as a man. Like, mind your business, dude. This is just what my face does. Story 22. I'm the guy who saw a photo of Elon Musk doing the supposed Nazi salute and said, no way, man. That photo was taken out of context. I'm sure that was a millisecond moment in time and he was really just waving. The camera just caught him at the wrong moment. Innocent, innocuous, no big deal. Then my wife sat me down and made me watch the video. I literally said, oh no, out loud. Story 23. Anti-maskers. And fidget spinners. No shade, I genuinely didn't believe anyone would buy them or use them when you can fidget for free with basically any object. I feel like an expert because I fidget with just my fingers. Story 24. First, flat earthers, which is insane. Also, Cybertrucks. Where I am in Missouri, I've never seen one before, But whenever I went to Pennsylvania for 2 months, I was seeing them all the time and would always ask whoever I was with what they looked like because they weren't rendering properly for me. Story 25. Out of date, I know, but that idiot stock advice guy who has bells and whistles and stomps around and acts like a moron giving financial advice. I first saw him in a cameo in some movie and thought he was an idiocracy-style mockery of modern media. Instead, I learned he's an actual person that actual people took financial advice from. Story 26. Driving through West Virginia in 2016, I passed a home that is a beaten-up single-wide trailer about 30 feet from a river. 5 cars in various states of disrepair were on the front lawn, with an ancient 20-foot satellite dish on the side. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that the river is their sole source of running water. Absolutely no doubt in my mind that supplemental security income and the supplemental nutrition assistance program are the sole sources of income. A massive Trump 2016 sign. Less than a mile further down the road, I passed a gate that protects a tree-lined private drive that is at least a quarter-mile long. Beautifully manicured lawn that you could play tennis on, and there is room for plenty on each side. At the end of the drive is a mansion, a real one, not a McMansion. Roman columns out front, 3 two-car garages with a carriage house on the side. I can't see the back, but you know there was at least a pool and probably a 3-hole golf course or trap shooting range. This is a $10 to $20 million property even in 2016 West Virginia. A massive Trump 2016 sign. I have a degree in political science with a concentration in United States politics. I have a pretty good understanding of the electorate and what drives voting. I will never understand how the man getting his water from a stream in a house on wheels with a car on blocks can look at the man in the mansion and not say, if that guy is for something, it's not something good for me. The stupidity of rural, poor Trump voters will be dismissed as a statistical anomaly, vote-counting fraud, or a fabrication when it is looked at by historians 500 years from now. They will simply refuse to believe anyone could possibly be that brain-dead. Story 27. I think you have to be incredibly misguided to support a society that would potentially harm people like you if they ever stepped foot there, and incredibly privileged to not have to deal with the consequences of having to live among them. Story 28. I actually have a funny one for this. Back when I was in Boy Scouts, there was a camp legend at the summer camp we went to that if you went to the overlook at night and looked down at the valley below, the lights from the houses, roads, and so on spelled out the word gay. The problem was we had a curfew, the overlook was about a 2-mile hike from camp, and it was on someone else's private property, so we were absolutely not allowed to be there at night, and you'd get sent home if you were caught. Now, this would have been around 2007, when "that's gay" was common vernacular and it was often used as a joke. With the legend coming from a bunch of teenage boys, everyone just laughed it off as a joke. But every year the legend was told and laughed at. One year, there were a handful of incidents that occurred, and it had been made abundantly clear that our troop would absolutely not be invited back to the camp in the future. So a couple of friends and I decided that we were going to put this myth to rest once and for all. The last night of camp, we snuck out and made our way to the overlook, literally dodging patrols that were actually out because of aforementioned incidents like a Metal Gear Solid game. Anyways, we finally got to the overlook, looked out at the valley below, and lo and behold, right hand to God, spelled out in capital letters and lights, gay. We all kind of just stood there, stunned. We got back to camp and told everyone about our findings, but they all assumed we chickened out, never made it to the overlook, or just lied about what we saw. But I will swear on my grave that that legend was true, and I couldn't have been more surprised that it was. Story 29. I used to live in Denton, Texas. There is a pretty famous couple who you would see driving around the city that had "the earth is flat" all over her car and his pickup truck. They used to come into the store I worked at and they were pleasant enough, but then one day I happened to notice the car they drove off in. I Googled flat earthers, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. It's insane that in the 21st century people still believe this. Story 30. There's an application at my former workplace that had a particular function that was mind-bogglingly stupid. Anytime I met someone who might know what the real application was or what the real function to use was, they told me the same thing, that I was using the correct application in the correct way. I still don't believe it. If it's true, it must have been a conspiracy. If it's false, it must be a conspiracy. Glad I don't work there anymore. Story 31. Everything leading up to 2016 until the present day. A full 8 years later, and the nightmare still continues for who knows how many more years. There was a nice little 4-year break in there, but we're back into it now, and I'm convinced this won't be the end after the second term. Story 32. Those floppy, inflatable tube men you see at car dealerships. For years, I thought they were just a joke from cartoons or memes, but then I saw one in real life and was like, oh my God, these things actually exist. Who thought this was a good marketing strategy? Story 33. A bottle opener that plugs into your seatbelt fastener so you don't have to wear your seatbelt and not hear the fasten your seatbelt sound. It's called the ticket.